Alexandre Belair, you're the spokesman for ACT for Canada, I believe.
That is correct.
Certainly the Ottawa chapter.
Yes.
And the ACT for Canada Ottawa chapter was intending to show the film by Michael Hansen.
Killing Europe.
Called Killing Europe. And about 20 hours or so before, or 24 hours or so before the schedule, actually a little less than that, I think.
Well, let's get that into this. We were planning to show the video Killing Europe. It's a documentary film, and it documents the very, very troubling rise of anti-Semitism, homophobia, and institutionalized rape culture in Europe. And it is a very painful movie. It brings some personal stories of suffering, and therefore it is not an easy watch, if you want to put it that way. But I think that it is really important that we expose some of these terrible things that are happening in Europe so that they don't start happening in Canada, and so that in Europe they can be addressed. We were planning to show the movie today on the 25th of November, 2017, between 2 and 4 p.m. at the Ottawa Public Library main auditorium in downtown Ottawa. And yesterday at around 11:45 a.m., we got an email, which looked nice and official, saying that our event had been cancelled by the Ottawa Public Library. Because we have had incidences in the past when we have brought forth painful topics of discussion to shine light onto them, that we have had hoax emails that looked very official, that told us that our event had been cancelled when in fact it had not been. We had tried to get in touch with the Ottawa Public Library to confirm whether or not this was yet another hoax, or if they had indeed decided to censor the speech of victims of violence. And
which event was it where you had the hoax cancellation?
I believe it was when we brought Dr. Jordan Peterson to speak in Ottawa, but I'm not certain. I know that it was more than one event that this had happened with. So we tried to get in touch with the Ottawa Public Library, and it wasn't until after 5 o'clock in the afternoon that we actually received a confirmation that indeed they revoked our rental of the auditorium, and that we were no longer going to be able to bring the stories of these victims of violence to public attention.
Wow. And do you know which groups had caused this to be shut down?
Well, all I know is hearsay from what I've heard. We have not been contacted by any of these groups directly, so I cannot guarantee that these are the groups. But I have heard that the hate group Antifa was paramount in orchestrating this campaign of hate against us to try and shut us down. I also understand that there were several people who claimed to represent the Muslim community who said that this would stigmatize the Muslim community. I do not know who these people were or why they think they represent the Muslim community. We have many different Muslim communities in Ottawa, from different parts of the Islamic world, and the vast silent majority want exposure of anybody who promotes violence, whether they're Muslim or not, because they are good people. And to say that simply because the majority of the perpetrators of violence in our documentary happen to be Muslims, that this means that all Muslims are somehow guilty of this violence, that is ludicrous, that is hate speech, that's putting the stigma of the actions of several individuals onto a group as a whole, and we must not permit that in our society.
First of all, I believe that this film was initially, the library and the authorities had approved this film.
Yes, of course. We want to follow community guidelines, and as such, we have provided the Ottawa Public Library with a copy of the video for them to view ahead of time. They did view it, and they did approve it after having seen the video. It wasn't until the hate groups that, I don't know for what reason, would want to silence victims of violence, started stating that started protesting against it and started a campaign of hate against us, that we got cancelled. And I believe it was the City of Ottawa councillors who had then viewed the video and deemed it against community standards. But of course they didn't tell us which community standards it was that our video violated, which is troublesome because I would like to have addressed their concerns. Now, yes, there were some very painful moments in this documentary, in this film. For example, some women talk of their experience of gang rape. And of course, I can understand that gang rape is not an easy subject to discuss, but we were there criticizing the perpetrators and supporting the victims. We were not promoting it, as some of these hate groups would have portrayed us as doing. And so I think there is a huge difference between, just saying, oh, well, this video has gang rape in it. We weren't promoting gang rape. We were trying to stop it. And when you're trying to stop violence against women and tell their stories of victimhood, not only were some of these women victimized, then the very institutions that were supposed to protect them attempted to bully them into silence because of the identity of their attackers. That is a story that must be told. And today, City of Ottawa and the Ottawa Public Library have re-victimized these women by denying them a platform to tell their stories of suffering. And I'm sorry, I think that is not acceptable.
What impact do you think the cancellation of this film had the library has had in terms of as a precedent, or is it a precedent in terms of freedom of speech, and what opinions or views or facts are even permitted to be presented to the public?
I'm sorry. We've always been told that women who come forth with their stories of abuse and violence they have experienced, they must be respected and they must be heard and listened to. Today, the City of Ottawa and the Ottawa Public Library have shown that victims of violence are not allowed to speak up and be heard. That is going beyond the pale for freedom of speech. How can you get help for these women? How can they get closure if they're not even allowed to share the pain they've experienced? I'm sorry, I'm getting very emotional about this. This hits very close to home.
You feel
freedom of speech is dead. If public library, which is supposed to be the forum to bring our community together so that it is inclusive of all, if that shuts down speech that helps expose problems within our community so that we can fix them, then I am sorry. We no longer have freedom of speech in Canada.